The sound, reaching the sound barrier always created a shock wave over populated areas.
Well, that era was a miserable era for me, because here I was, an engineer trying to do things, and you had these idiots back there making, it was a political situation, and he just jumped on it. This guy Shercliffe, I never met him. I don't know what his problem was. I know the British were taken by surprise on it. They were completely amazed at the problems we were getting.
Other scientists hypothesized that the exhaust from SSTs, expelled into the atmosphere at high altitude, would start a self-perpetuating chemical reaction that would ultimately deplete a radiation-absorbing layer of ozone in the stratosphere and bring on an increase in skin cancer.
I think there were other environmental concerns, perhaps not substantiated technically, about the ozone layer, about contamination of the upper atmosphere. There were all sorts of boogeymen shoved into the front of the table having to do with so-called environmental problems.
But public opinion was turning against the SST. And as resistance grew, Congress itself began to express doubts about the plane. In response, President Richard Nixon, shortly after he was elected in 1968, appointed a 12-member committee to report on the project.
Nixon was a firm believer in the SST when he came to power, like Presidents Johnson and Kennedy before him, and he felt that the SST was essential to American prestige. And in order to underline the case for the SST, he appointed a committee. To his great surprise, I think, and consternation, the committee came out against the SST and decided it was completely unviable.
Apart from the sonic boom, the Boeing SST was encountering other problems. When he set the goal for the American SST, President Kennedy had decreed that it would fly faster than its European rival at Mach 3. But at that speed, an aircraft's skin becomes red hot. You have to make it of expensive materials that will not melt or crack at those temperatures.
To reach the speed that the 2707 was going to go at, you had to find new materials to deal with the buildup of heat. The most effective material would be titanium. And at that time, titanium was really, really complex to machine, very expensive to get a hold of. It was going to make the whole project uncommercial.
It's tough environment, and temperatures in Maine is a real big problem. And whether you can ever design a structure to meet all this and still have enough left over to make any money with is not too clear at this point.
The British had long since decided that these problems were too difficult and expensive to bother solving. Concorde would fly at less than 2,000 kilometers per hour, where the heating problems were much reduced. Concorde could therefore be built out of standard metal alloys to keep the manufacturing costs down.
You went much faster than Mach 2. We got too hot for aluminum. I don't know, aluminum, I can't tell you exactly, but you wouldn't want to go too much beyond 2 to get to with aluminum, so you needed a better material. And titanium was quite capable. It was a good material, and we felt that it would be. So part of the program was learning how to manufacture.
As Boeing's engineers grappled with the problems, the 2707 program suffered delay after delay, while costs skyrocketed.
We spent several $1 million of our own company money in working titanium on the side of the outside of the contract on the SST, but maybe we were too ambitious. It might have worked at 2.5 Mach number, but I think that you go 3 and that's 400 degrees, and that's too hot.
On May the 18th, 1971, the United States Senate met to vote on a motion to end funding the SST project. President Nixon had worked hard to persuade the senators to keep on with the project, but without success. The Senate voted 58 to 37 to kill the Boeing 2707.
I think that Kennedy's decree that the SST should be bigger, better and faster than the European rival did cause major problems for Boeing and for the whole project right throughout it, because they were always aiming for this kind of Kennedy standard of Mach 3 and all the problems that are associated with flying at Mach 3.
I think that was too hot. It just wasn't practical. I think we could go faster than the 2. I think 2.5 would have probably been okay from a temperature standpoint. But certainly any higher than that would have probably not been practical.
Europe looked like it had won the technological race. In 1973, only 18 months after the Boeing SST project was cancelled, Concorde made its first visit to the USA to attend the inauguration of the new Dallas-Fort Worth airport. During its 4-day stay in Texas, Concorde made supersonic demonstration flights over the Gulf of Mexico and proved to be the outstanding attraction in the flying displays which formed part of the airport dedication ceremonies. But it would soon become clear that Concorde's victory was no victory at all. The problems that beset the Boeing 2707 and eventually killed it also affected Concorde, particularly the sonic boom. British Airways flew its first ever regular supersonic flight between London and Bahrain in the Persian Gulf on the 21st of January 1976. Unfortunately, the route was mainly overland, forcing Concorde to fly at subsonic speeds on large portions of the flight. Next came the introduction of a service to Singapore. But on the 13th of December 1977, after only 3 return flights, service was suspended because of complaints from the Malaysian government about the supersonic boom over the Straits of Malacca on the west coast of Malaysia.
Ultimately, Concorde, though it made it into passenger service, it suffered the sonic boom problem that had dogged the early Boeing project. The Americans banned supersonic flight over the continental United States. Some people said that was in retaliation. Whether it was or wasn't is neither here nor there. It meant that Concorde could only fly supersonic over the Atlantic.
It couldn't meet any of the requirements that we couldn't meet, and it still can't, but there's so few of them that nobody cares. They don't meet the sonic boom, and they don't meet the takeoff noise, and I guess there are probably only half a dozen or so flying in each airline.
Concorde will never be profitable in the sense of making back the money that it cost to buy or to develop. As far as the airlines are concerned, well, Concorde makes money on an individual flight-by-flight basis because it can charge very high tickets to the kind of luxury passengers that are there.
The system exists now because it's unique and it's high cost and it's one of a kind, and if you want to make a splash, you go over on the Concorde. And okay, Betsy and I were on it. Well, we went over, take off from Washington about 4:30 in the we took off from Washington about 4:30 in the afternoon, and you're in a hotel room in London, 9 o'clock. It's great.
But there is one aspect of the Boeing 2707 story that has never been told. A development that was to usher in the age of airline travel for everyone. On December the 22nd, 1965, Boeing's chairman, William Allen, and Juan Tripp of Pan American Airways signed a letter of intent which committed Pan Am to purchasing 25 of a new cargo plane. Unlike the 2707 that was dominating Boeing's attention, the new plane was almost an afterthought. Boeing kept it simple. The design was just a scaled-up 707. They called it the Model 747. The world would call it the Jumbo Jet.
The 747 is an amazing story. And it started back right after the Vietnam War, where the government said, we need to move a lot of material and a lot of people around the world in a hurry.
The 747 was actually developed in tandem with the Boeing supersonic project. And the aim was to put in the 747 what you couldn't get in the supersonic aircraft, which was freight. It was just meant to be a big cargo plane in the first place.
The Boeing company in 1965 decided to scale up the 707, I think as a freighter originally, but it was soon realised you could pack so many people into these aircraft and fly them at high subsonic speeds that it was very, very commercially viable and made great sense.
When the dream of supersonic passenger flight died, there was only one plane to step into the breach, the 747. The first 747 entered service with Pan Am in 1970 and started a true revolution in flying. Suddenly, the cost of long-distance air travel was within the budget of the ordinary family. The age of mass air transport was born. Today, there are over 1,200 747s flying, compared with just 12 Concords.
The dream of supersonic transport was an engineer's dream, it was a politician's dream, it was Kennedy's dream. The passengers wanted something different. They wanted cheap tickets, they wanted reliable service, they wanted comfort, and that will always be the future of the airline business.
Now, as a matter of fact, if somebody were to ask me today, will there ever be a supersonic airplane in the U.S., built by the U.S., I would say first you got to define what you mean by supersonic. There may very well be a more advanced Mach 2 airplane, larger, more economical, and so forth than the Concorde. They may very well be, I don't know that. But we are still today not ready in materials to go to Mach 3. We just don't have the wherewithal to do it.
But the dream lives on. Even today, Boeing are still working on designs to push the frontiers of speed for passenger aircraft. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird flies routinely at Mach 3. It is made of titanium, but metallurgy and materials technology are advancing all the time. Will the 21st century see the dream come true, when passenger aircraft fly alongside the Blackbird? This is the challenge and the true legacy of the Boeing 2707, one of the planes that never flew.